course, we could just run illegal ham radios.
I'm not against illegal activity. Because as we all know, I jaywalk.
Hello there, friends, and welcome to the Paranatural Podcast. My name is Ben.
And I am Jake on this most wonderful of days.
Oh my God, he used his real name.
I am
And
Jake.
we are so glad to have you with us tonight as we talk about one of the most famous UFO abduction cases of all time, the Fire in the Sky Travis Walton case. Jacob, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm good. For once, I will answer straight up. I am good.
That is amazing.
How are you?
I am fucking fantastic, my friend.
This is the story that came up even before we started the podcast.
Yeah, way before we were discussing this particular story.
Yeah. This is like, I think podcast was mentioned and we were like, we could do the Travis Walton case.
I think it was even before podcast was mentioned that we were talking about Travis Walton.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the cornerstones of our friendship there.
It very well might be.
Yeah.
And that being the case, we will not keep our listeners waiting too awful long. And I will simply say, if you enjoy our show, please do not forget to leave us that 5-star rating and review on Apple. When we get to 50, we're going to do a live chitty chat with all of y'all. And if you can't do that, we understand. Please share the show with a friend, share it on your social media. Just get word out there, bring more people in to listen to our fun and fuckery.
And something that could be a surprise, but Benjamin and I, we always do this over Zoom.
Yes.
We get to 50 and we do that live. I will get my ass to Benjamin and we will do a live together.
Same room for the first time since Sam Squanch? Snatched by Sam Squanch?
Second episode.
Episode.
I will get my ass to Benjamin and we will do a live together.
So there you go, people. Bring us together. Get us 50 reviews on Apple. All right, Jacob, you ready to talk about Travis Walton?
Always.
All right. So this story takes place on November 5th, 1975, when Mike Rogers and his logging crew were cutting brush at Turkey Springs, which was in the Apache Sitgraves National Forest, which is outside of Snowflake, Arizona. The crew consisted of Ken Peterson, John Gillette, Steve Pierce, Alan Dallas, Dwayne Smith, and the man who brought this all and made it famous, one Mr. Travis Walton. You'll have to forgive the sounds of paper flipping. I did this one old school.
Finally, I'm not the only one.
Now, it is of note, and this does come up, the crew were actually kind of behind on the contract that they were fulfilling for the Forestry Service doing this. And what they were doing out there was just really just cutting brush, like for fire prevention and things. Because they were behind, they were working 12-plus hour days. So on the 5th, they worked until 6 p.m., which at that time of year is pretty much sunset.
Yep.
And as they left the job site, they piled into Mike Rogers' truck with Rogers, Peterson, and Mr. Walton all up front because they didn't smoke, and the rest of the guys in the back because they did. Not in the bed of the truck. This is in the back seat. It was a double cab truck.
Yeah, the smoke blows out the window.
Yep.
You're good.
Yep.
You're good up front.
So these guys are headed home, and the road that they're on it's a mountain road. It's twisty, it's turny, it's rough, it's bumpy. And so they're going pretty slow. And they see some sort of light coming through the trees, like a very strange light. And it looked kind of fire-ish.
What?
Yeah, that's maybe why they call this Fire in the
Perhaps
Sky.
a fire in the sky, it looks like.
Which is the name originally of the movie that was made about this story.
Yeah, the book's like the Travis Walton experience, ain't it?
It was.
It
Travis
was.
has since changed the title to Fire in the Sky,
Okay.
but it's the same book. So anyway, they're headed down this road. They see this strange light. And like I mentioned, like wildfire is kind of a big deal in the mountains in Arizona, which is where they were. So they're like, oh, that might not be good. But look, we're headed like right for it. So they just keep driving. And eventually they come to the source of light and see it in a clearing. About 100 feet away from the truck, they see a disc-shaped craft that looked like two pie pans set lip to lip with an odd-shaped dome atop. In other words, a classic UFO.
This is an alien story, Ben?
It's an alien story, bud. That's why
Holy
I said
shit.
abduction. Travis didn't get kidnapped by sex traffickers. He got abducted by aliens. Okay?
That's the next story, is when he got abducted by sex traffickers.
This craft had no windows, but the bottom was made of panels that seemed to cast a glow, which is where the light was coming from.
Oh.
In case you're keeping score at home. No plot holes here.
No plot holes.
Travis did, well, I'm not sure if it was a stupid thing or a brave thing or the thing that, like, I might do. He gets out of the truck because he was overcome by an urgency to see the craft up close.
So what you're saying is he wouldn't survive in a horror movie.
No, Travis is going to get got. In fact, spoiler alert, Travis gets got. Anyway, he gets out and he heads towards the craft with all the dudes in the truck fucking yelling at him to get back in the truck.
Smart.
Like, Travis, you fucking moron, get your ass back over here. And he gets about 6 feet away from it and, like, sees a log in one of the brush piles that they had cut, and he ducks down behind the damn thing, and he is just staring at the craft, mesmerized.
Yeah.
And mostly he's looking at the bottom of it, and he said it was like perfectly shaped. Whatever the hell that means, it was perfectly shaped. That's what he said.
I always figured like perfect shape would be a boob.
I mean, yeah. Boob-shaped UFO. It's an Austin Powers joke right there. Yeah.
Weren't the boobs a submarine though?
I don't
And it was
remember.
the Giant Johnson
the Johnson was the but either way. Now, as Travis is knelt down behind this log staring at this craft, it begins to emit a series of beeping sounds that both Travis and the crew in the truck heard.
Morse code.
Now, remember, the craft and the truck are about 100 feet away from each other. So some fairly decent beeping going on. Still, the crew is yelling for Travis to get his ass back in the truck, but he's ignoring them, just staring at this fucking UFO. Then a low rumbling sound began to be heard.
Travis had Chinese food.
It was Taco Bell.
Oh.
The rumbling reminded the men of a bunch of large turbine generators starting up all at once.
It's quite the rumbling.
And the sound grew louder and louder. At this point, Travis kind of snaps out of whatever trance-like fascination he had fallen into and stands up from behind the log. And he was turning away from the craft when a numbing sensation hit him in the chest.
A numbing sensation hit him in the chest.
Hit him in the chest. He describes it as the sensation of being electrocuted by high voltage. I would call that not a numbing sensation, but Travis, you say whatever you want to say, bud.
I've touched a few electric fences in my day, and none of them are numbing.
Well, after the fact they are. You get a little tingly-wingly going on there, but that's how he describes it, and we're going to let the man describe it how the man describes it. The feeling spread throughout his entire body, and he recalls hearing a cracking sound before the world went black. That was it for Travis. He got a numbing, a tingling, and lights out.
Blackness. Nice.
The crew, being 100 feet away, had a different view on the situation. What they saw was a bluish-white beam of light that hit Travis in the back, lifted him about a foot into the air, and threw him 10 feet forward, where he hit the ground just limp as could be. The crew started yelling at Mike to floor it, deciding that absence was the better part of valor, and they just wanted to get gone. And I kind of can't blame them. They literally just saw their buddy get ragdolled by a flashlight. So get the fuck out, bud. Like, nope, not sticking around for that one. So Mike stomped on the go switch, and they careened down this rough, twisting, turning logging road, like with Mike just avoiding trees as best he could, and they're bouncing around in this old-ass busted spring truck that Mike had. And at first, Mike was like just terrified that the craft would be chasing them. But eventually he realized that it wasn't. And when he realized that it wasn't, he slammed on the brakes. Now, all this took place. They only made it about a quarter of a mile down the mountain, which is a little bit like they were a quarter mile away from the spot, but that's like a lot of logging road.
It is.
Because these roads don't go straight. You know, they wind and they twist and they turn, shit like that. So it was a few minutes that it took him to get that quarter of a mile.
Yeah.
When Mike slammed on the brake, the dudes began arguing about whether or not to go back for Travis. Some of them wanted to. Some of them were like, fuck that. He's dead. Let's get the fuck gone. The argument eventually got so heated that they got out of the truck to have it. So I kind of feel like they might have been about to come to blows over this situation. Now, during this argument, Mike said he saw a white light shoot off into the sky, or at least he thinks he did. Eventually, cooler heads prevailed and everybody settled down, and they got back in the truck and went back for their friend, which kudos to those guys. You know, I'm not sure if that's the smartest thing to do, but that's what they were doing.
If you and I were, logging and stuff, and your dumbass got out to investigate what you can clearly see as a UFO from the truck, but you want a better view. If you got exploded by a flashlight, I probably wouldn't floor it. I'd probably go out there and do my damnedest to pull you back to the truck.
I would like to say the same thing. Like, I would like to believe that I am that kind of brave. But until you're in that situation, I guess you kind of really don't know.
Well, I mean, so I'm going to go back to the story that I've told 100 times on this podcast, but my dog man story.
Right.
Me and Gage were out there. He had the BB gun. I had the flashlight. That motherfucker takes off running. I would not have left him. I would not.
I mean, okay. I'm going to say this is a little different.
Little different.
You didn't think Gage was dead.
I have the kiss of life, Ben. Even if you're dead, I got you.
A little CPR, a little bit of whatever.
Mouth to mouth.
I'm just saying, to be absolutely realistic, I would love to think I was the kind of brave that I would not leave a friend lying there, dead or not.
Especially a best friend, Jake.
But, yeah, I really don't know in that situation,
I like to think I wouldn't leave you.
If there was any inkling that you were still alive, that's a little different. Like, but if you just watch somebody get ragdolled like that, like, the thought that they're dead it's pretty understandable.
Just to let you know for future reference, because this isn't only going to be the podcast. We're going to go investigate spooky places together. If I get ragdolled 10 feet, I'm still alive. It takes more than 10 feet with a flashlight to kill me.
All right, if you say so.
Like 50 feet, then you can leave.
I'll save you.
I appreciate it.
All right. So anyway, they do go back for Travis. And by the time they get there, it's dark.
Is it dark?
It's dark.
Okay.
So it took them a minute to find the actual clearing where he even was, but they did find it. And Mike turns his truck. The UFO's gone. Mike turns his truck. He shined the headlights into the clearing. The guys get out. They look around. They cannot find Travis.
It was all of them that went back, right?
Yes.
Okay.
For the initial search, yes.
Okay.
They as far as I could tell, they all went back.
Okay. Because I thought it was only 4 of them that went back.
So we'll get there, but 3 of the men did not go back when the actual search party went to look for him. They could not take it.
Okay.
But at this point, they all went back. And when they could not find Travis, some of the men, Mike Rogers included, actually broke down under the weight of the situation and began to just weep uncontrollably. At this period of time, 1975, with these kind of men, for them to even admit such a thing says a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're talking about a time when men didn't cry, and you're talking about these guys are outdoorsy logger tough guy types.
Yeah.
They don't break. They live dangerous situations and, whatever. So for them to admit it says a lot.
If they got attacked by a bear, they would pee in the bear wound to make it better.
Exactly.
Yeah, they were tough.
Yeah, if these guys hacked their fucking leg off on accident with a chainsaw, they would just keep working, hopping on one leg.
Duct tape.
Yep, that's the kind of guys these were. They'd throw their fucking leg in the back of the truck, be like, we'll get that attached later. We got work to do. That's these kind of fucking dudes.
What men?
So, now they couldn't find him, and they didn't know what else to do. So they decided to drive down to the nearby town of Heber to contact the police. Ken Peterson was the one to actually make the call to the Navajo County Sheriff's Department because Mike Rogers did not have his shit together enough to do it himself. This guy was real tore up about what was going on.
Well, they were besties, right?
Yeah, they were very good friends.
Yeah.
They reached Deputy Chuck Ellison around 7:30 p.m.
Chuck Ellison?
Chuck Ellison.
It's not a very Navajo name.
Not everybody in the county is Navajo, bud. Now, at first, they did not say anything about UFOs or anything like that and simply told the deputy on the phone that Travis had gone missing. Now, once the deputy arrived, they told him what happened. The deputy called Sheriff Marlon Gillespie, who arrived with Under Sheriff Ken Copeland. They accompanied Mike Rogers, Ken Peterson, Alan Dallas, and Chuck Ellison back to the site to look for Travis. So this is the part where the party splits.
Dallas went back?
Yeah, Dallas went back.
Huh.
Yeah, unlike the movie, Alan Dallas and Travis Walton did not actually hate each other like that. They might have had some disputes and things like that, but it wasn't like that. Now, all 3 law enforcement officers were fairly suspicious of the crew and their UFO story, and I can't say I blame them a goddamn bit. It's a wild story, and yeah, I'm gonna be a little suspicious too.
My friend got exploded by a light.
my friend, he did. The light hit him, and he went limp, motherfucker, and now I can't find him.
What's there not to believe there?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the most believable story I've ever heard. So anyway, they go back up to the spot and they search the area, but found no evidence of anything. There was no prints, there was no scorch marks, there was just nothing. Chuck Ellison went back into town to recruit help in searching. There was a concern that if Travis was indeed lost and that they had not killed him, the cold at night would be enough to put him in real trouble. All he had on was a light jacket. It's November.
It's Arizona.
But it's November and Arizona can get cold at night.
It can, but not
and they're in the
very
mountain.
Cold.
There was just concern. Mike Rogers suggested that Travis's mom, Mary Kellett, should be notified. Mary lived in a cabin in the woods and had no phone.
Well, that is not a good scenario.
I think it's a great scenario.
That's how
I've never seen that movie. Anyway.
Cabin in the Woods?
Yeah.
Such a good movie.
I've heard, but I haven't seen it. So after this suggestion, Mike and Undersheriff Copeland went out to Mary's cabin and got there about 1 a.m. And she greeted them with a partially open door and a gun in her hand because she was kind of a fiercely independent and somewhat paranoid type of woman. Mike Rogers told her the story in fits and starts, and when he eventually got it all out, Mary asked a very strange question. And the question she asked was, have you told anyone else? Which, yeah, that's a real weird question. And it made Undersheriff Copeland very suspicious, mostly because he expected like a bigger, more emotional reaction to hearing that your son has been blasted by a UFO and is now gone, right? But I guess what they didn't like take into account was the type of person that Mary Kellett was. Like, she was simply put a very fiercely independent woman who had raised 6 children by herself.
6 of them.
Rarely had any money, and yet had made do, and was just the type of person who would not show emotion in front of strangers. It was not in her nature. Eventually, though, she would fold under the stress of the situation and be taken to her daughter's house, where she would contact her son, Dwayne, her second oldest son, and Dwayne would come immediately from his home in Glendale to kind of handle the situation. So early the next morning, this would be Thursday morning, more volunteers would arrive to help search for Travis. Over 50 searchers traipsed through the woods looking for the lost Walton. Among these were 2 men who were seen using a Geiger counter in the area where the UFO had been spotted.
Aha.
Yeah.
People actually believe.
Mike Rogers approached the men and asked if he and his crew could be checked with the instrument. Now, none of the men pegged the Geiger counter, but their hard hats did actually show higher levels of radiation than would be normally found without some external source. Kind of note is, so you said, old people did believe. Well, at this point, the only people that had been told about the UFO were the police and Mary Kellett. And the police didn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So where the fuck did these 2 guys come from with their goddamn Geiger counter?
Were they wearing black?
It doesn't say.
Were they lizard people?
It doesn't say, but I'm kind of interested.
Motherfuckers are joining this show too.
And it's even worse with the fact that the 2 men never identified themselves and nobody knew who the hell they were.
Motherfuckers.
So that's just really fucking weird.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any more information about it, which is really stupid, but it's real fucking weird.
Those motherfuckers.
Now, by Saturday morning, the sheriff had actually called off the search because he fully believed that this was a murder case.
Yep.
Mike Rogers and Dwayne Walton insisted that the search continue. And they showed up very angry at Gillespie's door on Saturday morning. And whatever they said to the sheriff, by that afternoon, there were men on horseback in the woods and aircraft spotters out there to continue looking for Travis Walton.
Death threats.
He could have been. Who knows? Gillespie had tried to keep a lid on the whole UFO thing, like I just mentioned. Like, he thought it was a murder. He's not going to run around talking about UFOs if he thinks it's a fucking murder case.
Right.
But either way, he didn't want the circus that would come along with saying anything about the UFO. But just like a cheap diaper, that shit leaked. And the first UFO researcher on the scene was Fred Sylvanus. And he interviewed Mike Rogers on the evening of Saturday the 8th with Dwayne Walton by his side. Dwayne being there did not help matters much, because during the interview, he frequently interrupted Rogers and talked about how he and Travis had always agreed that if they encountered a UFO, they would try to make contact by any means necessary. Dwayne stated that Travis had behaved exactly like they had always said they would and had, quote, received the benefit of it, end quote.
The benefit.
Yeah, the benefit. To this, Rogers responded, quote, "You hope he has." I'm kind of with Mike on this one. It doesn't look like much of
kidding.
a fucking benefit to me.
Oh.
But Dwayne was apparently a very optimistic fellow and was adamant that Travis would return unharmed because, quote, aliens don't kill people. I'm not sure where he's getting that information.
I don't know. He didn't hear my podcast about the Soviet Union.
He has not heard about a lot of alien encounters that we will probably cover at later times, but Brazil UFOs have, there's a certain type of them that fucking
Annihilate.
With light beams. Anyway, we'll get to that in time.
Thank God we're not in Brazil, huh?
I mean, unless you get an Antonio V.S. Boas case, and then I wish we were in
that's
Brazil.
your dream, mister.
But anyway, during the interview, Mike Rogers, on top of telling the story, also expressed his frustration at what he considered a lackluster search effort. His primary bitch was that they didn't even bring in bloodhounds despite his mentioning it over and over again.
His primary bitch.
That was his primary bitch, apparently.
I like
his primary complaint. Now, as expected, the police were pushing a narrative all their own. The Snowflake Town Marshal, Sanford Flake, was firmly of the opinion that this was a money-making hoax perpetrated by Travis and Dwayne Walton. He said that they faked the UFO using a large balloon.
Boy, does that feels like what's that called? What's it called? Deja vu, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some swamp gas.
But yeah, that was his theory, was that like Dwayne, while they were working, went out there, blew up a big balloon that looked like a UFO, and they had a stage that Travis would get out, he'd hit him with a flashlight, Travis would go limp and scare the guys and whatever, and they were going to make money off of this. That was his fucking theory.
Okay. For one, he got some mighty lungs. For two, flashlights were like 10 lumen back then. At most.
I mean, I'm sure they had brighter lights than that, but like searchlights, spotlights, things like that, but
my earliest memory, you know what shining is?
yeah.
Okay, so
For those of you who don't know, it's an illegal thing.
what?
Well, okay, if you shoot at the deer while you're shining them, it's illegal. If you're just out with a spotlight and no gun, you're fine. But what you do is you drive down the road when you see deer, you shine a spotlight at them, and it makes them like stop and just stare at you.
Yeah, you're scoping out.
Right.
Yeah, you're not shooting them. That is illegal. But for just seeing where they are for future reference. But I'm just saying, my freaking like little 3-inch flashlight out there is more powerful than my dad's spotlight was back then.
Maybe your dad just didn't have a good spotlight.
It was a great spotlight. The best money could buy in 1997.
Well, anyway, spotlight thing aside, we both agree the Marshall's theory is pretty much bullshit, right?
Bullshit.
Well, we're not the only ones who thought that. There were actually quite a few people who thought it was bullshit, including the man's very own wife, who said that his idea was just as far-fetched as Dwayne Walton's. So, there you go. Leave it to a wife to be like, look, shut up, stupid.
I like the wife in this one.
Now, it is of note that the Marshal had some sort of feud with Travis. I did not find out what that feud was, but they had a long-running feud. And the Marshal was dead set on catching Travis in a lie with this thing and proving it was a hoax. And he went so far as to bring an entire camera crew to a Bear Creek ranch where he believed Travis was hiding out. Fucking spoiler alert, Travis wasn't there and they left empty-handed. Okay? Yeah. And the Marshal had egg on his face.
Douche.
Other law enforcement officials put their focus on Travis's mom, interrogating her multiple times while Travis was missing.
You don't bother the mama.
Eventually, Dwayne put a stop to them harassing his mother and told them not to come back until they had a damn good reason to.
Attaboy Dwayne.
On Monday the 10th, Mike Rogers and his crew went in for polygraph tests at the insistence of Sheriff Gillespie. Cy Gilson, a polygraph examiner with the Department of Public Safety, administered the tests. Each man underwent 4 20-minute tests where they were asked questions like, did you cause Travis Walton any serious physical harm last Wednesday afternoon? And did you tell the truth about seeing a UFO last Wednesday when Travis Walton disappeared? All of the men passed except for Alan Dallas, whose results came back inconclusive. Now, I'd like to make a note here. Inconclusive is not the same as a lie. They're 2 different readings on a polygraph test. And Dallas had a criminal past, and it was believed that that may have affected his results. The man was fucking nervous being in a police station taking a polygraph test.
I don't know if I read this somewhere or if it was in an interview I saw, but weren't one of the warrants live?
I didn't see that, so I don't know. All I saw was that he did have a criminal past.
Yeah.
And I know in later years he was in trouble with the law again.
Attaboy Dallas.
But, So, even with Dallas coming back inconclusive,
you still have 4 out of 5.
You still have 4 out of 5. And his was not, hey, this guy's lying. It was just, we really can't tell. And that was enough to convince law enforcement and even Sheriff Gillespie, who had been suspicious from the get-go, that this wasn't a murder. I don't think it made him believe it was a UFO, but it was enough to convince him that it wasn't a murder. So that's something. Anyway, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but I just want to make note that, during this time, even if law enforcement was convinced that it wasn't a murder, the town still kind of believed it was. And I feel really bad for the crew because they were kind of pariahs in the community during this time. These 5 days were really, really rough on these guys. They were questioned multiple times. They underwent their polygraph, and the town was just like, these guys killed Travis. Fuck them.
He's a witch. Burner.
Right. Now, 5 days after Travis disappeared, Grant Neff, Travis's brother-in-law, was awoken in the wee hours of the morning by his telephone ringing. He answered and heard a weak, hazy voice say, "This is Travis. I'm in a phone booth at the Heber gas station and I need help. Come and get me." The voice did not sound like Travis's, and Neff thought that this was a prank call. Apparently, the Walton family had received many prank calls since Travis went missing, and so Neff informed the caller that he had the wrong number. The voice was insistent and actually became panicky at this point, and said, "It's me, Grant. I'm hurt and I need your help badly. You come and get me." This was enough to convince Neff, and he flew out the door and went to get Dwayne. The two of them went to the Heber gas station, where they found Travis slumped in the middle phone booth. Travis was a bit grizzled looking and had 5 days of beard growth on his face and seemed to be in a mild state of shock, but was otherwise okay. He was wearing the same clothes he had had on 5 days previously, so they decided to take him to his mother's house for a change of clothes. Travis remembered very little of what happened. He spoke of encountering strange creatures on the craft with eyes that scared him, and he recalled waking up next to the highway outside of Heber just in time to see a silver, disc-shaped craft take off into the night sky. In later years, under hypnosis, Travis would actually remember his time on the craft, and we will talk about that towards the end. So, but on the way to his mother's house, Travis believed he had only been gone a few hours. That is, until Dwayne told him that it had been 5 days.
5 days and 6 hours.
Travis did not believe his brother at first, and it wasn't until he felt the growth of whiskers on his cheeks that it would sink in that he had indeed been gone for that amount of time. Once Travis got to his mom's house, he changed his clothes, and for some reason, I don't know, maybe his clothes didn't fit quite right, because Travis Walton he's a fairly thin guy.
Yeah.
And, well, he found out that he lost 11 pounds. And if you're a fairly thin guy, 11
That's
pounds
a
is
lot.
fairly noticeable.
Yeah.
So I kind of think maybe he put on his clothes and he was like, why are my pants so damn loose? You know, like. Now, Travis insisted that the police not know he was back and wanted to go get medical help first.
Mm-hmm.
This the family agreed to and decided to take Travis to a physician in Phoenix. And they tried their best to, you know, keep Travis hidden, but it wasn't long, 2:30 a.m., actually, that Sheriff Gillespie received a tip from the phone company, or an employee at the phone company, that someone had called the Neff household from the bank of phones at the Heber gas station. Fucking phone company people. What dicks.
I know.
They got a rat. Anyway. Gillespie got Chuck Ellison and Lieutenant E.M. Romo to go to the Heber gas station and dust for prints. They did get prints, but it was unclear if any of them were Travis Walton's.
I mean, that makes sense, yeah.
Officers on duty that morning were placed at strategic points and told to watch for Walton family vehicles. A deputy was sent to Mary Kellett's home to see if Travis was there. When he drove up, he saw that the lights were on and that Dwayne, or at least like his car, was there. All of which made the deputy very suspicious.
Very suspicious.
Now, of course, we know Travis was indeed there, but they decided to hide him, and apparently they did a good job because the deputy didn't find him. Dwayne and Travis managed to slip away, and Dwayne would later that day call Sheriff Gillespie and tell the sheriff that Travis had been taken to a hospital in Tucson. In reality, Dwayne was actually driving Travis to see Dr. Lester Stewart, who had been recommended by a member of Ground Saucer Watch, William Spaulding. And Spaulding had approached Dwayne when he first heard of the UFO story and said, hey, if Travis comes back, you know, let me know and we'll hook you up with like free medical exams and things like that. So Dwayne had called Spaulding, you know, that morning and made arrangements for Travis to be seen at 9 a.m. on the morning of the 11th.
It's a perfect name to have in this that business. Spaulding.
Spaulding. The Walton brothers arrived at a rundown hotel near the airport. The building looked sketchy, and it took them a moment to find Dr. Lester Stewart's office. The word hypnotherapist was written boldly on the door.
Written.
Painted, something. They walked in hesitantly. The office was as sketchy as the building it was housed in. There was no AC, the decor was worn and outdated, and there was no medical equipment in sight. Dwayne, who was still kind of in control of things at this point, immediately began to express his apprehension and demanded to know if Lester Stewart was indeed a real medical doctor. After some lying, hemming, and hawing, the man admitted that he did not have a license to practice medicine in the state of Arizona. The Walton brothers left. They stormed right out of there, and yeah, good call, guys.
Pretty sure that's also a felony. Impersonating a doctor?
Well, he was a hypnotherapist. That's what he was practicing under.
That's still a therapist.
Hypnotherapy does not require a medical license.
No?
No.
Why not?
You can't distribute medicine. You're just hypnotizing people.
Oh, you went through a tough time. I know that before you. I'm gonna give you some Xanax.
You can't do that if you're a hypnotherapist.
I could.
So anyway, the press had caught wind of Travis's return, most likely from the police, and the Walton family were bombarded with phone calls. Dwayne's girlfriend had been fielding calls all morning, including some from William Spaulding.
Spaulding.
Now, after the thing with the fake doctor, Travis did not want any more help from Ground Saucer Watch or William Spaulding. This refusal apparently offended Mr. Spaulding, and GSW turned on Travis. GSW being Ground Saucer Watch.
I was hoping that was the case.
So Spaulding and that particular group began to spread word to the press that Travis Walton's story was bullshit.
Wow.
Yeah. Fucking assholes.
Don't hurt their feelings.
I know, right? Like shit. Cora Lorenzen, one of the founders of the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, or APRO, who this will probably come up, APRO will probably come up in future episodes, by the by, stepped in and after some convincing got Travis some real medical attention. Dr. Joseph Saltz and Dr. Howard Candell made a house call and performed an exhaustive examination of Travis. After which, they arranged for more tests the next day. Sheriff Gillespie showed up to clear out the missing person case. So he just had to see Travis, and then he could close his case, and he was done with this whole damn thing. Dwayne and Travis pretty much stayed clear of the press for quite some time. So for a while, William Spaulding was the only one talking to the press about the whole Travis Walton getting abducted thing, and he was being a dick and pretty much just running around calling the whole thing bullshit and saying everyone involved was a fucking liar.
What a floppy lip douchebag.
Yeah. Little fucking bitch-ass motherfucker.
I'm going to beat him up.
Fucking sends him to a fake doctor and then gets offended they don't want any more help. What a cocksucker.
What a cocksucker.
Anyway, Travis underwent a bunch of tests and was found to be perfectly healthy. The only anomaly was a 2-millimeter spot near his elbow that was consistent with a needle puncture.
A 2 millimeter?
2 millimeter.
So like bruising?
2 millimeter red spot was what they said.
Okay.
Otherwise, he had no bruises, no broken nothing. He was like a little dehydrated and otherwise fine.
I don't know. It's been a long time since I watched the movie and listened to his interviews and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't he also suffer from like some sort of PTSD from it?
I mean, yes.
Like,
but that was not
like
it wasn't immediately apparent, but
okay.
In following years, yes, he'd have nightmares about it and, you know, various other PTSD related symptoms. As you would.
Yeah, I would hope.
I mean, right?
Yeah. I remember hearing that he had PTSD. I can't remember if it's from his I know the movie depicts like right off the bat he's like hiding under tables and shit, but
right.
Even Travis Walton says the movie is garbage.
The movie is highly dramatized.
Yeah, they Hollywooded the shit out of it.
And I mean,
it was a good movie.
Like, it is decent. A good movie,
but
dramatized.
Yeah. Travis Walton in his interviews, he says that is not how things went.
Which we'll get there. Because of the puncture mark, that one little red spot near his elbow, skeptics, of course, call this evidence of drug use.
Son of a dick.
But that is despite the fact that Travis had taken a whiz quiz and it came back clean.
Whiz quiz, I like that.
And at the time, Travis was very anti-drug use.
Attaboy.
He didn't even drink.
Attaboy.
Like, he was a clean and sober guy.
Straight arrow.
At
straight
the time,
edge.
Which is pretty good for a 22-year-old in 1975.
No shiz.
All right, let's just... Okay. On November 13th, Dwayne and Travis agreed to sit down with some reporters. 3 of them from the National Enquirer, to be exact. Now, in the presence of Dr. Candell and Dr. Saltz, Travis underwent a hypnosis session by Dr. James Harder. Also present were the aforementioned reporters and some other doctors that the National Enquirer had rounded up to be there. And just to pause from the story for a second, I have talked a lot of shit about the National Enquirer in my time. However, there are a few stories where they come up that we'll cover, and every single time these motherfuckers put forth a lot of money to verify the stories they're trying to report on. It's kind of impressive.
Yeah.
Like in this case, they sent him to the doctors. They sent reporters. They sat in on his hypnosis session. They sent 3 reporters and other doctors to sit in on Travis's first hypnosis session.
Yeah.
They were trying very hard to verify this shit. So talk all the shit you want about them. Like I said, every time they come up, you're going to see they do some fucking research. It's kind of impressive. Bat boy be damned. I'm not even sure if that was an Enquirer, but it was one of them rag mags. Anyway, Travis underwent this hypnosis and did not at the time recall anything additional. Some of the details that he could already remember became a little clearer. And during the session, they encountered a mental block. And Travis, under hypnosis, said that he would die if they went any further. So at that point, they did stop.
Well, that's nice of him.
Travis underwent a polygraph of his own. In fact, he approached Sheriff Gillespie about getting it done and requested that Cy Gilson, the man who had tested the rest of the crew, be the one to test him. This test was supposed to be done in secret, but back to the leaky diaper, word got out, and the test had to be called off. Now, because of skepticism this and skepticism that and whatever, eventually the National Enquirer insisted that Travis take a polygraph. They were very insistent he do this. Again, they're just trying to cross their T's and dot their I's as much as they can for an unbelievable story, but try to gather as much evidence for it as they could. Travis consented under the condition that the results would not be released without his consent. They contacted John J. McCarthy, who was the director of Arizona's polygraph laboratory. McCarthy was an absolute cocksucker about the entire thing. He pretty much spent the whole time just badgering Travis and making Travis admit to shit like previous drug use, like in his teens, and also to an incident that involved writing a bad check or writing bad checks, which was something Travis had done prison time for. And that was like the only time he'd ever been in trouble with the law, really, I guess. But McCarthy just fucking badgered him about it and was just an absolute fucking cocksucker about it. And at the end of it, he declared that Travis had failed the test and refused to test him again.
What a douche.
Absolutely.
I don't like him.
So, yeah, the guy was just an entire bag of dicks about the whole thing. Of note, in February of 1976, Travis did take another more fair polygraph test that he passed with flying colors.
Attaboy.
So, now, just to kind of make a long story short, there were skeptics, there were believers, and they all had their say and their reasons for what they felt. But Travis would go on to be awarded $5,000 by the National Enquirer for having the most influential UFO story of the year.
I would imagine that should be more than $5,000.
$5,000 was a lot of money back then. And not to mention all the money they already put forward to have him medically examined and everything else. So they did pretty all right by Travis. And I'll just note that there was one point during their investigation that they actually stopped believing him and tried to tried to get rid of the story internally. But then he did the polygraph and it came back around and they believed him again. It was a wild ordeal with people calling bullshit and other people saying, no, he's telling the truth and, whatever. Also of note, Travis's coworkers, the crew of men who saw Travis get zapped, never changed their story. Not ever. Not until their dying day. And this is despite the fact that, according to rumor, Steve Pierce, who was the youngest member of the crew, was at one point offered $10,000 to come forward and say it was bullshit. And he refused that offer.
Attaboy.
So, now we get to the fun part. As I mentioned, in later years, Travis would undergo further hypnosis to unlock the memory of what happened to him aboard the craft. Here is what he recalls. The first thing he remembers after blacking out is pain. An intense ache all over his body that was centered on his head and chest. A feeling as if he had been broken into 100 pieces.
I can't feel good.
Sounds unfucking comfortable. He was on his back, and his mouth was dry and full of a metallic taste, and his muscles felt weak. As his vision began to clear, he could see a light above him. The air was hot, humid, and heavy to the point of being hard to breathe. He was fully clothed and could feel that his shirt and jacket had been pushed up under his armpits, exposing his chest and stomach.
Arr.
He could feel something flat laying on his chest and thought he was in an emergency room. A shiny, dark gray device about 4 to 5 inches thick curved across his body. Then he noticed that there were forms of people standing over him, one on the left and 2 on his right. Still in a state of confusion and unable to properly focus, he thought they were doctors. Then suddenly, things came into focus. He describes the beings as being horrible creatures with huge, luminous brown eyes the size of quarters. That doesn't seem real big to me, honestly.
Give me a second. I got a quarter in my...
All right, go ahead. Let us see here.
All right, there's George.
All right. Put Mr. Washington up to your fish. Yeah, I mean, if you open your eye real wide, it's like quarter-sized, I guess. Not quite.
I mean, I got squinty eyes, though.
Yeah, I mean, same.
Yeah, I look like a pot smoker. A weed entre. I look like I partake in the pots.
The shape of my eyes is about the only thing Native American looking on my entire body. They're very almond-shaped. But anyway, so they were the size of quarters. We're just going to go with it. Now, seeing these beings, Travis freaked the fuck out and began striking out at the 2 on the right. I don't know why the one on the left got free, but he's punching out at the one on the right.
Attaboy.
He caught one of them with an elbow and knocked it back into the other. So Travis throwing bows up in this motherfucker. Fucking taking,
That's how you do it.
Taking Ludacris's advice on this
Drop
one,
a
throwing
bow.
bows. He says the creature felt soft and spongy through its clothing and that it was very light and fell easily. At this point, Travis lunged off the table and the device on his chest fell to the floor. Travis said he felt weak and was struggling to move as the creatures started coming towards him with their arms outstretched, reaching for him.
You gotta pull a gat.
Stay strapped or get clapped, baby. Nearby, Travis spotted a thin, transparent cylinder that was about 18 inches long. He grabbed it and tried to break it bar fight style to use as a weapon. But it wouldn't break.
Shit.
He's trying that old Wild West thing where you bust a bottle and stab somebody.
I was going Happy Gilmore, but yeah.
Still, he didn't have much choice, and he began swinging this cylinder at the creatures and screaming at them to get away. This slowed them down, but did not immediately stop them. Travis kept shrieking and crouched down, ready to fight, and that stopped the creatures. Travis said they were under 5 feet tall, with kind of a basic humanoid shape, meaning 2 arms, 2 legs, 5 fingers, things like that. They were very thin, and their skin he described as being marshmallowy.
I think I could fuck him up.
I mean, right? I would keep fighting them. They wore orangish-brownish coverall suits that had no seams, buttons, zippers, or snaps.
Wonder if they were Carhartt.
I mean, maybe. They had small feet and pinkish tan footwear, which I feel like does not match their orangish-brownish coveralls. Not very style sensitive, these guys.
Wearing Crocs and coveralls.
Crocs and coveralls. Their hands were small and delicate and lacked any lines or fingernails.
I could definitely fuck them up.
I mean, right? They'd never done a turn of hard work in their life.
No.
Little lineless hand little bastards with no fingernails. Just scratch them. Scratch their marshmallowy skin off their face. They had bulging bald heads with receding jaws and underdeveloped fetus-like features. Yeah, he says their faces reminded him of a fetus. So, if you take all of that into account, they look like fucking aliens. Okay?
They sound like majorly fuck-upable creatures.
I don't know why I had to go through all that just to tell you guys. They look like what you think of when you think of a fucking alien, but there you go. I did. Haha, joke's on you. The creatures fled from the room, and Travis took a second to look around. The room was all metal. Again, without seam, rivet, screw, or weld to be found. Even the furniture blended into the walls and floors as if it was all molded from one piece of material. 3D printed room. Travis looked out the door and saw no sign of the creatures that had so recently fled. So he decided to exit stage left. Literally, the door was on his left, and that's where he went. Outside of the door was a curving hallway. And when he got in this hallway, Travis just kind of broke into a frightened run. He passed an open door on his left without looking, but when he spotted another ahead on the right, he decided he had better look and try to find a way out. Through the door was a room about 16 feet across with a domed ceiling about 10 feet high. Inside the room was a high-backed metal chair that had buttons and levers on the arms.
Levers. You're from Michigan. Why? Levers, everyone.
Levers. He approached the chair, and the room began to grow dark around him, and stars appeared all around, taking place of the walls and the floor, making it look as if he was in outer space. Travis did what any of us would do and started pushing fucking buttons, hoping that one of them would open a door. So he just started poking buttons and playing with levers, and all this did was cause the stars around him to move, and like a display showed some lines that he couldn't really understand what they were, and poking buttons and pushing levers just kind of moved this shit around.
Lovers.
But it did really nothing else for him. Then Travis heard a sound, and he turned around to see a man standing in the doorway. The man was 6'2" and very muscular, dressed in a tight blue coverall and a helmet.
Whoa, now.
I know, right? The man gestured for Travis to come to him. I'm going to do that
Come
one
on,
again.
Ben.
I'm going to take that one again.
I've said this 100 times. This ain't a smut podcast. Come to him. Not on him, to him.
The man gestured for Travis to come to him, and Travis ran to him excitedly. And he started asking questions, just all kinds of fucking questions. The man didn't answer, and Travis assumed that he couldn't hear because of the helmet, which that'd be one motherfucker of a helmet. The man took Travis gently by the arm and led him down a hallway that opened into a small bare room. Another door opened, and fresh air came through. They went down a ramp into a huge area where Travis saw a few more craft like the one that he had been zip-zapped by.
Mama ship.
Yep, they're on the fucking mothership. They went on through other doors and down hallways until they entered a white room with a table and chairs in it. Also in this room were 3 other humans. 2 men and a woman.
Ooh.
They wore the same tight blue uniform, but no helmet. All of them, according to Travis, shared a family-like resemblance, so they all looked similar.
Weren't they blonde?
What I was looking at didn't really say, but I feel like I've heard that before.
Yeah, same.
So,
like, I thought I heard him say they look like Norwegian or something.
There are allegedly.
I don't
have
push the button.
Hold on.
Push the damn button, Ben.
Push the goddamn button.
Allegedly. There we go.
A race of extraterrestrials called the Nordics, which are the tall, blonde, pretty-looking fucking aliens.
That's actually what I am, Ben.
What? Yes, I know.
Okay. Not 3 gnomes in a damn trench coat.
So
I'm a Nordic Norwegian.
You're a Nordic alien?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I specialize in probing. Mere Ben.
Been there, done that. It's not that impressive. So, of course, seeing other humans, Travis started asking more questions. But these humans, too, just ignored him.
Damn mutes.
Did not answer. The helmeted dude sat Travis down in the chair and left. After a few moments, one of the men and the woman came over to Travis, stood him up, and guided him toward the table.
And this is where it turns into a smut podcast.
Travis started to resist, but they pushed him down gently and made him lie upon the table.
Oh, boy.
The woman suddenly had something in her hand that looked like an oxygen mask with no tube. She pressed it down over Travis's mouth and nose, and before he could push it away, he was in Night-Night Land.
I've been there.
The next thing he recalls is waking up beside the highway outside of Heber. And that is what happened to Travis aboard the craft. Now, like I said, the hypnosis took place in later years, and it's not quite the end of the evidence. Jacob, would you like to talk about what happened to the trees?
The trees. You said 2014, right?
Yes, sir.
In 2014, apparently, like, ever since 1975, there was research teams going out to that area, like, seeing and whatnot. But in 2014, the trees that were, like, surrounding the opening or the clearing, it was like the growth had increased by like 50%.
30%.
I think they said 30%.
30%.
And there wasn't scorch marks, were there?
No, not a single one.
But the growth, and there was some radioactivity measured.
Right. Not enough to be like concerned or not, like anything like that. But it was there in the area was an increased measure of radioactive something.
Yeah.
And the trees in the immediate area had shown 30% more growth between 1975 and 2014 than they had for the previous 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
And furthermore, the growth was actually on the side pointed towards the craft.
Yeah.
And then this effect dwindled as you moved away from the clearing. Now, when they realized this, the people, I can't remember who it was that figured this out, but they went and they're like, okay, does radiation do this? So they began looking for studies. And what they found was a 1997 study from Poland that had studied trees in the Chernobyl area and found the exact same type of findings, where the accelerated growth and all that shit on the trees around Chernobyl had occurred in the same way. So that's fucking fascinating as hell.
Chernobyl, that's Ukraine, Holmes.
Yeah, but the study was from Poland, a Polish university. Now, I know this is one of your favorites, so what have you else to say, Jacob?
About Travis?
About Travis Walton, anything, any part of it.
Like, that's a broad statement, Ben. What am I allowed to say?
Whatever you want, buddy.
Okay. So 2 months before 1975 Travis Walton getting abducted, 2 months before that,
Mm-hmm.
a movie came out about Barney and Betty Hill's abduction, starring Darth
James
Vader,
Earl Jones.
Luke.
He didn't
Oh
say it,
wait,
Luke.
no,
No,
I am your father.
I am your father.
That's the part where you like gotta push the deep voice button.
I got it set too deep for that.
Luke, I am your father.
Oh, did I take that off there? I did.
What a douche. Okay, another thing that I would like to say, because this is my absolute favorite story, and this is what got me back into aliens after my little scare.
Mm-hmm.
I would watch his interviews. He's got multiple interviews on like YouTube and on YouTube, but like,
Oh, and in various podcasts. He's still, to this day, or at least, I mean, last time I knew, was still touring UFO conferences to tell his story. Yeah.
I'm waiting for him to come to the one in Houghton Lake. Like, I really want to go to the UFO con in Houghton Lake, but I really want Travis to go there. Like, Travis is the one guy that I want to meet. But through all of his interviews that I've watched, and I have watched multiple, he doesn't change his story. The only thing that's changed from like whenever he did his first interview, like 1980s, I think.
No, I think the first interview he did was like 76.
Oh, well, one of the first on YouTube. But to like now, the only thing that's changed is the reason he thinks that he got abducted.
Yep.
Originally, he had no idea. Like, he thought they were just doing research or whatever. Now, with some scientific data, he thinks that he got picked up, abducted, in his words, because they didn't want to leave him as intergalactic roadkill.
Yeah. Yep.
I think it was the young, nerdy looking guy and his crew, the younger guy who got offered $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was hanging out of the window yelling for Travis,
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the back. And years later, he got diagnosed with skin cancer on that side of his body.
Yeah, I think that was the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, an aggressive skin cancer.
Yep.
So Travis, knowing that, he was like, what do you think would have happened to me if I was just left here, if they didn't pick me up?
Yeah, essentially Travis's theory now is that whatever that bright light was, it was an accident.
Yeah, and it was super radioactive,
Like,
super lethal.
They didn't mean to shoot him with a beam of light or a beam of radiation or whatever the fuck it was. And when they did, it was pretty much like fucking Gleeborp hit the wrong fucking button. And then his supervisor was like, God damn it, what are you doing? You just killed a guy. And so they just picked him up so they could fix him.
Yeah.
Like, that's his theory now, which when you listen to his story, if you take out the part where he's freaking out, it kind of sounds like they were bringing him back.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly. Because, like, it doesn't sound like they administered any sedative or anything to make him feel super weak.
Right. It's
So
like he was healing.
Yeah, that advanced amount of radiation or whatever the hell they hit him with made his muscles weak, made him real just weak in general.
I mean, for all we know, it might have done everything short of kill him.
Yeah, yeah.
For fuck's
Like,
sake, it might have killed the guy.
yeah, that could have been a very lethal
But if they
dose
have
of light.
if they have a medical technology that can fix that, it kind of
Which,
sounds like that's what they were doing.
yeah, because the light that just like bounced off the ground and like, because it was a beam of light, but you're still gonna have the light particles come off. It was just those little light particles that hit that guy's arm and that side of his face.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he got the skin cancer on.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, it was stage 3 skin cancer, which is quite advanced.
Yeah. Which
And
this was years and years later.
But that's like nowhere close to the dose that Travis got.
Right.
Travis got
the full force, bud.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't like notice lesions or something.
Well, like if they healed him though,
right?
Any burns, anything like that, they could have taken care of.
Yeah, anyone who has recovered from a significant medical procedure, some sort of operation, you notice your body is super weak because it's trying to heal yourself. So like even with them like healing him, his body's still going to have to do the part of healing.
Well, and from the sound of it, like, so let's for a moment assume they have the technology to take the accidentally irradiated individual and heal him fairly quickly, right? We're going to say that thing that was on his chest was the healing thing. Like whatever it was doing, that's their healing technology.
Mm-hmm.
He got up too early. He wasn't done yet. So he gets up. He's not fully healed yet. He's still injured. And the thing just falls on the goddamn floor. And he said that when it hit the floor, it like fell on its top. So the part that was on him was now pointed up and it had all kinds of like lights and shit under it.
Yep.
So that could be like some Star Trek ass fucking medical bay healing shit going on.
Yeah. And then he starts decking out little aliens and stuff.
Then he just says, I'm Travis Walton, bitch. Catch a bow.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, then the Norwegian dicks, they're like, okay, you're a bit dangerous. So the aliens are like, okay, we're going to have someone who looks like you calm you down.
Yep.
Put this fucking mask on you so we can fix you the rest of the way and then drop you off on your planet.
Yep.
Where you can get back to your life.
Yeah. Now, how they knew to drop him by a road, that's kind of weird. Maybe they just washed enough. I don't know.
Well, I mean, realistically, if you're going to visit a place, you're going to do some sort of research.
Yeah, I suppose.
Like, even way back in the day, you're looking at a map, you've heard about it on TV, whatever. Even pioneers, they hear stories about how this land is, all that.
Which, I mean, I guess if they knew enough to know what a town was, because they dropped him off fairly close to Heber. So yeah, it's like they took him back to the closest town to where they picked him up.
Some sort of populated area.
Yeah. They're like, here, you can get help here. We're going to set you down right here. And then they flew away.
Yeah. So I like to think that Travis is accurate on what he said about not being left for intergalactic roadkill.
Well, like I said, if you just take the story for the facts, like it does sound like what they were doing was medically healing him. He woke up not being experimented on, not having blood drawn, not having, all of the other type of shit that aliens are said to do. But instead, he woke up with a device across his chest, which what's in your chest is all the shit that keeps you alive, with the exception of your brain, right? That's all the shit. And he woke up with something on his chest that wasn't hurting him.
It was just on him.
It was just laying there. His body was hurting. Of course, he just got fucking ragdolled. But like that, it sounds like they were healing him. And even then, like, yeah, they approached him, but they didn't like forcefully do it. And when the big 6'2" guy, fucking came to get him, he was nice about it. You know, he took him by the arm and he led him. He didn't force him. When they laid him on the table, they were very gentle about it. Like,
well, damn near 50 years, the only thing that's changed in his story is the reason that he got picked up.
yep.
That is the only aspect that has changed.
And even that is just something that he has come to after he dealt with the PTSD from the situation and everything else. And he eventually came around to that idea, but everything else has stayed the same. And I want to reiterate, the guys that witnessed it never changed their story.
Yep.
And a lot of people bring up the fact that, okay, so the contract they were doing, I mentioned they were behind. They had already gotten an extension on that contract.
Yep.
And they were still behind. And Mike Rogers was going to have to get another extension. A lot of people bring that up, but I don't think that, why would you fucking hoax something like this? Those extensions from the Forestry Service are something Mike Rogers was familiar with getting, and they were due for an inspection on their work, which would have gotten them paid for the 3 previous weeks of work.
Yeah.
And this whole thing delayed the fuck out of that. So Mike Rogers actually delayed getting paid for this quote unquote hoax. And then after that, after all this cleared up and whatever, he actually got another contract from the Forestry Service that was a 2-man job. And he hired Travis. If those other guys were going to come forward, it would have been right then being butthurt about not getting hired again.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, most of the people on the crew, if not all of them, were financially hurting.
Yeah, these guys were like
delay.
Temporary workers, man. They weren't getting paid.
So even if there is some sort of little white lie in this, if he can say, well, this part isn't true and get $10,000, you don't think he would?
Back then, dude, 10 grand was a fuck ton. 10 grand's a lot of money now.
Yeah.
Back then, it was a lot more.
Damn near 50 years ago, 10 grand
that was
is
like
a life changer.
That was like a year's wages, maybe more.
More.
You know, you're talking back when good money was making like $1.50 an hour.
Yeah.
You know, like that was a decent living wage.
Yeah. Let's see, what else did I want to say about this? I know there's more. We covered Darth Vader.
Yep. Which I don't know if you fully got to the point on that.
Oh,
a lot of people pointed to that as well, this is why they made up an abduction story, is because this fucking movie came out, and it was a pretty big movie at the time.
But that was also 20 years after Barney and Betty's case.
Yeah. But the movie was mainstream. The case was not.
Yeah. So yeah, that's certain people were like, that's why he went for this type of scenario.
Right.
But all things aside, in my mind, this is the most accurate, most believable UFO abduction case I have ever heard. Granted, I've put a lot more time into listening and like reading about this story, but it is my absolute favorite alien story of all.
Yeah, I think I've heard other ones, I can't think of them right off the top of my head, that I would say are as believable, but none are more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
before this, Barney and Betty was like the biggest things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you got plans to cover that.
Absolutely. So, we are definitely going to do Betty and Barney Hill. How can you not?
Right. So I won't say anything about that, but like a scale of believability to me, Travis is way up on the list.
Yeah, he's top tier for sure. And a lot of it has to do with, like I said, these guys, 6 people saw this happen, and none of them ever changed their story. These guys had no reason to continue this lie. None whatsoever. And yet none of them ever came forward to say otherwise. Travis is the only one who ever made any sort of money off of this, and he got paid for his book, the movie, and fucking his appearances at conventions. None of the other guys ever made money off of that.
No.
So again, if this wasn't true, why wouldn't they come forward and say? Because they could have got paid after the movie came out to come out and say this is all bullshit. They could have made a fuck ton of money.
Well,
and
imagine
none of
the
them
offers that they got that weren't spoken of.
Yeah, I mean, we know about one like guy who was offered 10 grand by someone who really, really, really wanted to prove this wrong. But you got to imagine for years and years, these guys, and even if they weren't approached with it, they still could have approached someone with it. And it would have made them money. Another
thing to mention is back then people were a lot more closed-minded about this kind of stuff. Like,
absolutely.
The one time people really freaked out about aliens was Roswell, yeah, maybe, but Orson Welles.
The War of the Worlds broadcast.
Yeah,
which
like people thought that was real.
Not as many people as the story has grown to be.
Right.
There were a few people who freaked out, but most people actually realized it was a radio drama.
Yeah, but it was believable. I've listened to it 100 times.
But like, yeah, I don't know. Just the very fact that like in the polygraph test, I know you cannot trust a polygraph test. Right.
But for 6 people to pass the exact same thing,
that's
if they're all lying,
real compelling fucking bit of evidence.
Yeah.
You know,
like inconclusive is just like it's saying the person didn't really understand the phrasing of the question or something. It not that they were lying.
Was so nervous that you couldn't get a good baseline reading is what it means. And like, I've heard this. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I heard that Alan Dallas did, in fact, in later times, take another polygraph and pass.
And passed. Yeah.
I remember heard that. I'm not sure.
I remember Travis Walton saying that.
But so we'll put that in the I'm not sure category.
I remember Travis Walton saying that.
So
in one of his interviews.
That's compelling as fuck too.
Yeah. And like, I do remember him saying that him and Dallas didn't get along in every aspect, especially while at working.
But they weren't enemies.
Right.
They just butted heads sometimes.
But if anyone was going to come forward, it would be Dallas. And the fact that he's willing to do another polygraph test to prove that all of them aren't lying.
Yeah.
That's saying something. That's saying that this has got to be true, especially seeking no monetary gain.
Yeah.
And 6 people aren't going to just believe that they saw something enough to... It's like one person believes a story, and certain people, I know they came after him about like false memory syndrome and that kind of shit, but there's 6 people who saw the same damn thing.
Right.
And like I've said, and I will continue to say until my dying breath, this is the most convincing abduction case there is so far.
You know what? I think that's pretty much the final word on it, brother.
Yes.
Yeah. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for listening to the show. Please don't forget to share the show with a friend. Bring other people in to listen to our fuckery. This might be a good episode to do it on. It was a pretty good one. Good story. So until next time, don't forget that we love you. Thank you so much for listening. And good night.
It's a great fucking story. The best. And good night. Love you.